What's up, JEFusion fans? This is Philip and welcome back to another video. So, back in late May, Japanese TV channel NHK, albeit their like cable TV version, they released a poll and broadcasted on their channel, of course. So their poll was about Super Sentai, considering we're celebrating 50 years of Super Sentai, and they released a poll, like I mentioned, so asking fans about three things. So first, their favorite Sentai team, or you could say show in general. Their favorite ranger, individually speaking, and number three, their favorite robot or mecha. And as the results would have it, so Japan's favorite Super Sentai team, so according to the poll results, was Gokaiger. Individually, the number one Sentai Ranger, or the number one Ranger, was Shinken Red, and the most popular robo according to the poll was Don Oni Taijin. So I thought, why not give my personal take and give you guys my personal picks? And I had to go through some thinking because honestly, this is a hard video to make. Considering so many great options and so many great backgrounds as to, these characters, these mechs, and why I like them so much. So I was thinking of doing a top 10 for each category, but I'm not sure how long that would take me. But instead, I decided to condense everything into one video, but I will just mention my overall favorite or favorites from among all the Super Sentai entries. So I'm going to share with you my favorite team overall and why. So, as well as my favorite ranger individually and my favorite mecha. So maybe you might disagree with my opinion. Well, this is of course purely subjective, but if you want to let me know your comments or what you think, leave your comments down below. Share to everyone what you think, which is your top team, which is your top ranger, and which is your top robo. So let us know, again, down in the comment section. So with that said, let's begin. Now, I have made a video about this particular team that I am placing as my favorite Sentai team, or maybe Sentai show overall. Well, I would say maybe I might separate these two now that I think about it, because the show itself, again, should be different from the team, but my overall favorite show so far would be King Oger. I mentioned it before, King Oger is the GOAT. The GOAT! Okay, so again, it's vastly superior to every other Sentai that came before it, and actually, I don't think it's gonna be surpassed anytime soon. Gojuger, because it's an anniversary series, might come close, but I don't know. But just the fact that Toei has decided to, again, create a world that is very much different from what we have experienced up until that point, right? Creating a whole new original world in a whole new original universe, if you might say, with characters that are more fantastical than realistic. Again, it's a very fresh take on Super Sentai, and you could say King Oger by itself is a standalone show, right? Although Toei had to give it a connection to the main Super Sentai, universe, thanks to Kyoryuger, but again, even without that connection, if you skip that, I still think, up until this day, King Oger will stand on its own as a show. Now, as my actual favorite team in general, I would say I'm gonna have to give it to Shinkenger. So I made a video about Shinkenger and why I think it's still one of the best of all time. Probably not on the same level as King Odor. If King Odor hadn't come out, or if King Odor wasn't the way it was, if it were like any other Super Sentai show, I think Shinkenger could still be on top. But it's still, in my opinion, one of the greatest entries in the Super Sentai series. And it's because of the members of the team. So, one of the reasons why I loved Shinkenger so much is, like, in my opinion, each Shinkenger was a representative of Japanese culture. Again, I've said in the video long ago, and maybe for this one I'll have to say it again. So Shinken Red, aka Takeru, so he represents, or he embodies, the spirit of, like, the samurai in general. So Ryunosuke represents arts by performing kabuki. So Mako is, well, at least she tries to embody the idea of Yamato Nadeshiko, or basically the Japanese ideal woman. Again, despite the irony that she doesn't cook very well, well, she still tries her best, to become like an ideal woman, if you would say. So Chiaki is more representative of a modern Japanese youth, and Japan is very famous for its video games, and he loves video games. And Kotoha is more representative of, like, a regional aspect of Japan, and again, it's more regional traditions coming from Kyoto, which is an area very rich in its own traditions and cultures. So again, Kotoha represents like Kyoto, basically. I mean, the actress Suzuka Morita is from Kyoto herself, so she naturally embodies, or she would naturally represent Kyoto in the Kansai area, naturally and perfectly. So that's a very good choice. So, and last but not the least, so Genta represents Japanese food. So he's a sushi chef, and of course, sushi is a staple Japanese food. And when we talk about Japanese food, like, everybody's gonna talk about sushi. Whether you know a lot about Japan or not, when we talk about Japanese food, sushi is definitely gonna come to mind. And he did at one time make curry, which has also made, kind of into one of another Japanese staple. Well, yes, curry is technically from India, or correct me if I'm wrong, but, like, I think it came from India. But Japanese people have adapted curry into their own cuisine, and, well, it's not definitely gonna be as spicy as, it's definitely not gonna be as spicy as, like, authentic Indian curry, but it has been adapted to the Japanese taste. And again, it is a very famous dish that would also be commonly cooked in Japanese homes. So again, like I mentioned, each Shinkenger represents an aspect of Japanese culture, which makes, again, Shinkenger the most Japanese, if you will, amongst all of the Super Sentai entries. And again, it's because of the characters and how they interact with each other. I think up until this day, that would make Shinkenger overall like a solid show as well. Now, moving on to my personal favorite ranger. So, well, I'm gonna be honest here. While Red Rangers are my favorite, and if I were given a chance to become a Sentai hero and pick my own color, I'm definitely choosing red. However, thinking about it, my personal favorite ranger overall isn't even red. So at least from a viewer's perspective, this is my favorite ranger. I'm going back to King Oger and talk about Papillon Oger. So Dita Kaniska is my favorite ranger ever. Now, I do understand that in the promotional, like some early promotional content, so Dita is marketed as like a non-binary, but again, I still think Rita is very much a woman, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But episode 38 just flips everything. Like, personally, King Oger episode 38 is the best episode in all of Sentai history, at least from my opinion, or in my opinion rather. But yeah, so why? Now, Dita has always been portrayed as this, cold, or rather, emotionless character, and that's because she had to carry the heavy weight of, being basically the ruler of Gokkan, right? So she's the ruler of her country while also being a judge. So she has to make decisions that impact, hundreds, thousands, or maybe even millions of lives on a daily basis since she was a child. Like, maybe just a little over 10 years old or something. Imagine carrying that kind of weight from such a very young age. So Rita had to suppress everything, which is why in her private time, so she locks herself up in her room and tries to cuddle with Mofun, just to get off that stress from her. It's a really tough life if you look at it, if you think about it very carefully. But again, there is so much layer to Rita than what we see, despite showing like much less emotion compared to the other King Ogers. But nonetheless, I think Rita was arguably the most popular character during King Oger's run, much more than the supposed main character Gira, who's the Red Ranger as well. But again, Rita's performance, or rather Yusuke Hirakawa's performance in episode 38, the typically unemotional, silent Rita Kaniska turns into this hyper adorable idol called Rita, and it just blew my mind how amazing Yuzuki's acting was, and how the typical image of Rita Kaniska had been broken in just one episode. And it's even just that one episode, but it's stuck. Okay? And I'm still like, I'm still gonna squee every time I watch that episode, or even when I try to remember that episode. It's just, just, it's just so adorable. It's just so amazing that, again, this makes Rita my personal favorite ranger individually. So, lastly, let's talk about my favorite robot. And I would have to say it's gonna have to be Dairen-O from Dai Ranger. Now, you might, for Western viewers, you might know the Dairen-O as the Thunder Megazord from the second season of Power Rangers. So, Dairen-O is basically composed of the Ryusei-O, which is the main body, and Ryusei-O by itself can turn into a robot, which makes, again, so Ryusei-O by itself can fight giant monsters and defeat most of them easily. Of course, it becomes it only becomes more powerful when combining with the other heavenly or mythical chi beasts, if I'm correct. So other kidenju, if you will. So by combining Ryusei-O and the other mythical chi beasts or kidenju, so you get Dai-Nen-O. First of all, I do like the design of Daireno, which is based on like a Chinese soldier. So like the helmet, the sword, the armor, like that aesthetic really rocks. I think even until this day, it holds up just because of how awesome that design is. And again, it was quite powerful in my opinion. Maybe not as powerful as, let's say, like the King Odor Robo. Like, it's not definitely gonna break, like a universe or something. But nonetheless, like, based on aesthetics alone, I'm still gonna say it's gonna be Daireno that's my favorite. So yeah, it's awesome. It's a unique design, and I think really holds up well until this day. So yeah, so these are just some of my favorites when it comes to the Super Sentai series. So again, let me know which ones are your favorites down in the comment section. So thanks for watching. As always, please do leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell so you get the latest from JEFusion. This has been Philip, and I'll see you next time. Bye.